I never should have looked up when the door creaked open, but I did. I was in the middle of taking notes on protein metabolism, highlighter in one hand, coffee-stained notebook in the other, when the auditorium fell silent for half a second. That's when I saw him for the first time. Brandon Whitmore walked into our lecture hall like he owned the air we were breathing. He didn't rush, didn't apologize, just offered a lazy smile to the professor and said, "Sorry, I'm late." His tone held no regret, and he wore that apology like a tailored suit. Expensive, effortless, and completely unnecessary. The professor, a man who once scolded a girl for yawning too loud, simply nodded and looked away, as if Brandon's tardiness was a privilege we were all expected to accept. His clothes were sharp, cream blazer, designer jeans, leather shoes that didn't squeak like the rest of ours. He looked like he belonged in a New York gallery, not a biochemistry lecture in Chapel Hill. His hair was too perfect, styled in that deliberately messy way rich boys seem to master. I hated how I noticed. Hated even more that when he scanned the room and locked eyes with me, I felt my cheeks burn. I looked away immediately, but it was too late. He had already smiled. I told myself to forget it. Guys like Brandon didn't notice girls like me. But when class ended and I started gathering my notes, his voice, warm, smooth, a little amused, appeared over my shoulder. "You wouldn't happen to know where a guy could get a decent cup of coffee around here, would you?" I froze for a beat, then replied without looking up, "There's a vending machine in the lobby if you don't mind drinking regret." He laughed, and I hated how much I liked the sound of it. "That bad, huh? Then maybe you can join me somewhere that serves actual coffee." I finally looked up. "Emily," I said, realizing too late that he hadn't even asked for my name yet. "Brandon," he replied, extending his hand like we were at a cocktail party, not standing between rows of squeaky seats and spilled Red Bull cans. "I've got anatomy next," I told him. He smiled like he already knew. "Professor Henley? Don't worry, he's repeating last week's lecture. He always does after breaks." I blinked. "How do you know my schedule?" He shrugged, grinning. "Lucky guess." I don't know what possessed me to say yes. Maybe it was the way the September sun poured through the old glass windows, painting golden streaks on his shoulders. Or maybe I just wanted to feel like someone who said yes to things. We walked together past the ivy-covered science buildings, down the cobblestone path lined with turning leaves. Brandon offered his arm like we were in a period film, and somehow I took it. He drove a dark blue Mercedes, the kind of car my mom used to point at and say, "That's somebody else's tax bracket, honey." The interior smelled like leather and citrus. As I sank into the seat, I caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror, wide-eyed, flushed, not quite believing this was real. "You ever been to Blue Finch Cafe?" he asked. I shook my head. "It's kind of pricey," I admitted. "Then it's perfect," he replied. "Today is on me." Inside the cafe, the lights were soft, the servers wore crisp uniforms, and the menu made my wallet flinch. Brandon noticed. "Just order what you want," he said. "Not what you think you can afford." We talked. About school. About professors. He made fun of our economics TA in a way that was somehow charming instead of cruel. He spoke about his parents, how his dad ran a regional investment firm, how his mom wanted him to go into law, but he preferred medicine. "I haven't decided if I'll actually become a doctor, though," he said, sipping his espresso. "Then why study it?" I asked. He smiled. "Because education is never wasted, and these are supposed to be the best years of our lives, right?" I remember nodding, even though a part of me bristled. My best years involved microwave noodles, scholarship applications, and working weekends at the hospital's reception desk. Still, I let myself be swept up in the magic of it all. Maybe I wanted to believe that boys like Brandon could fall for girls like me. Maybe I needed to believe that I was more than just my mother's daughter, more than just another broke student scribbling notes in the third row. Whatever the reason, when he kissed the back of my hand outside the cafe and said, "I'll see you tomorrow, Emily," I didn't tell him not to. I just nodded, like it was the most natural thing in the world. even though everything inside me whispered it wasn't. The first time I saw his lake house, I remember thinking it looked like a place people took engagement photos. The kind of home with stone chimneys, wraparound porches, and French doors that opened onto a still sheet of water like something from a luxury travel magazine. Brandon had picked me up after class, said he wanted to show me somewhere quieter. I was hesitant. It was only our third weekend seeing each other, but his tone was so casual, so effortless, that I didn't want to seem paranoid. I still remember the way he leaned over the steering wheel as we drove through winding mountain roads, his profile backlit by late autumn sun. "You're safe with me," he'd said when I hesitated at the front door, and for some reason I believed him. That night, wrapped in an oversized sweater, I watched him build a fire and pour wine like he'd done it 100 times before. I felt out of place, too small in his world, too plain in my thrift store boots. But he made me feel like the only thing in the room that mattered. We talked for hours. About everything. About nothing. I told him I wanted to become a trauma surgeon. How I dreamed of saving people. He told me I was too serious, then kissed me like he was trying to prove I didn't need to be. And when things moved faster than I'd planned, when I should have paused, I didn't. I told myself it meant something because I wanted it to. In the days that followed, Brandon didn't change. If anything, he was sweeter. He brought coffee to my study group, left handwritten notes in my locker, even met my mother once, though only briefly, and he didn't step past the doorway. My mom didn't say much after he left, just stared at me with those tired eyes of hers and said, "Don't confuse charm with character." I brushed it off. I was 19 in love and foolish enough to think that was the same as being wise. Then came the night that broke the spell. It was after a theater performance. We'd gone to see a ballet downtown. Brandon had been oddly quiet all evening, so I offered to grab us tea while he waited at the student cafe in the arts building. When I returned, I heard him before I saw him. His voice, unmistakably his, coming from behind a column. "So, did you win?" Someone chuckled. "Not yet," Brandon replied. "She's not as easy as I thought. The whole virgin thing. She's really holding on to it, but I'll close the deal before Thanksgiving. I bet sabet." Then laughter. "Dude, just take her back to the lake house again. That place practically does the work for you." I couldn't move. My hands trembled. The tea spilled a little unnoticed. I stood frozen behind that pillar, trying to remember how to breathe. Bet. Not love. Not affection. A game. I was the prize in a game I didn't even know I was playing. My body felt like it wasn't mine. I turned slowly, walked out into the cold, and didn't look back. I didn't call him. Didn't confront him. What could I say that wouldn't make me feel smaller than I already did? I went home and cried into my pillow, letting my sobs dissolve the illusion I had clung to. My mother knocked once, then left me alone. I think she already knew. A week passed. He texted, called, even left flowers by my door. I ignored them all. Then one night, I found myself in the bathroom, gripping the sink edge, fighting off waves of nausea. At first, I thought it was stress, or grief, or maybe karma's cruel joke. But when the sickness didn't stop, I bought a test. 2 pink lines. 2. I stared at them for so long my eyes blurred. I read the instructions again and again, hoping I'd misunderstood. I hadn't. I sat on the cold tile floor, knees drawn to my chest, and felt something inside me splinter. Not because I was pregnant, but because I had no idea what to do now. I thought about calling Brandon. I even typed out a message once, but I deleted it. What would I even say? "Hey, surprise. That girl you tried to win, like a beer pong trophy? She's carrying your child." No, I couldn't stomach the idea, but eventually I had to face him. And when I did, everything unraveled, even faster than I imagined. I waited for him at the same cafe where we had first met. It felt cruelly symmetrical. Outside, rain drummed steadily against the windows, turning the world into a watercolor of gray and silver. I had rehearsed the conversation 100 times in my head, crafting every word like I was preparing for surgery. Clinical, precise, detached. But nothing could prepare me for how it would really feel. Brandon arrived late. He walked in like the rain was just a minor inconvenience, like this was just another casual meetup. His coat was soaked, but it made him look effortlessly rugged. He smiled when he saw me, that same confident smile that used to make me forget who I was. Not anymore. "Hey, gorgeous," he said, leaning down to kiss my cheek like nothing had happened, like he hadn't vanished for weeks. "Sorry, traffic was a nightmare." I didn't respond to the kiss. I barely smiled. He sat across from me, ordered coffee, looked at me curiously. "You look pale. Everything okay?" I nodded once, then inhaled deeply. "I need to tell you something." He leaned back in his seat, the grin softening. "All right, I'm listening." I met his gaze, steady and unwavering. "I'm pregnant." His face didn't change right away. For a second, I thought he hadn't heard me. Then he blinked once, twice, and set his coffee cup down, just a bit too hard. "You're sure?" he asked, voice quieter now. "Yes. I took 3 tests." Silence stretched between us like a noose tightening. He looked over my head, like searching for an escape hatch in the ceiling. After a long pause, he cleared his throat. "Okay, well, look, this isn't the end of the world. There are options." My stomach turned. "What kind of options?" "Safe ones," he said quickly. "There's a clinic in Raleigh. Discreet. I know someone there. You'll be in and out, no complications. You won't even remember it after a week." I stared at him, unsure whether I was hearing him correctly. "You're suggesting I get rid of it?" "I'm saying this doesn't have to ruin both of our lives," he replied, his voice inching toward condescension. "We're young. I've got med school, internships, maybe a year abroad. I'm not ready to be a father." Something in me cracked. "And you think I'm ready to be a mother?" I snapped. He raised his hands, palms out. "I'm just saying we have to be smart. Don't make this emotional." Emotional. The word echoed in my skull like an insult. "This isn't a class project, Brandon. This is a child. Our child." He exhaled sharply. "Emily, please. You're not thinking clearly. You're a student. You live with your mom. You can't do this alone." I stood up. "Watch me." He grabbed his wallet, pulled out a few crisp bills, hundreds, folded them, held them out like they were some kind of favor. "Take this. It'll cover the appointment, or baby clothes, or whatever. Just don't make this messier than it needs to be." I looked at the money like it was a pile of roaches. "I don't want your money." "Don't be stubborn," he said, pushing the cash toward me. "You'll need it." I stared at him, stunned, then whispered, "You're disgusting." He rolled his eyes, then flicked the bills onto the table, where they fluttered and landed wet in the puddle forming near the window. "Suit yourself," he muttered, "but don't come crawling back when it gets hard. And don't even think about putting my name on any paperwork. My dad's lawyers will bury it." He turned, walked out into the rain, and didn't look back. I stayed there for a while. People glanced at me, at the money soaking on the table, at the tears running silently down my face. No one said a word. When I finally stood up, my knees almost buckled. I left the money where it was. Outside, the rain clung to my skin like judgment. I walked home in silence, head down, heart shattered, but something deeper was stirring too. Not rage, not fear, something quieter. He had shown me exactly who he was, and now it was time I showed the world who I could be. The day I packed my things and left Chapel Hill, my mother didn't say much. She stood by the front door with her arms crossed, watching me load a duffel bag and a half-torn box of textbooks into the back seat of her rusted-out sedan. "You don't have to go," she said quietly, but I could see the relief in her eyes. Not because she wanted me gone, but because she knew I was making a decision she never had the chance to make. I told her I was going to Aunt Darlene's in Bloomington, said I needed space to think, to figure things out. What I didn't say was that I felt like I was falling apart, and I wasn't sure how to keep breathing in the same town where everything had gone wrong. Aunt Darlene welcomed me with a hug that lasted longer than I expected. She lived in a small house at the edge of town, surrounded by maple trees and silence. She didn't ask many questions, just pointed to the guest room, handed me a folded set of sheets, and said, "Whatever you need, kiddo. You're safe here." I spent the first week sleeping too much and eating too little. Then, one morning, I opened a textbook, Human Physiology, the same one I'd studied before my world exploded, and I started reading. Not because I had to, but because it was the only thing that still made sense. The pregnancy was harder than I thought it would be. I had morning sickness that lasted all day, constant back pain, and waves of fear that hit me out of nowhere. But something strange happened too. I started to feel stronger. Each time I heard the heartbeat at the clinic, each time I felt a flutter in my stomach, I remembered why I had stayed, why I hadn't taken the easy way out. I wasn't just carrying a child. I was building a future. One heartbeat, 1 inch of spine at a time. Caleb was born on a snowy morning in March. He came into the world screaming and squirming and perfect, and when they placed him on my chest, I cried so hard I thought my ribs would break. The nurse smiled and said, "That's a good strong cry. He's got lungs." I looked down at him, pink, tiny, furious, and whispered, "I've got you, and you've got me." The weeks after his birth were a blur of feedings, diaper changes, and exhaustion, so deep it felt like drowning. But there was joy too, unexpected, overwhelming joy, like the way his tiny fingers curled around mine, or the way he smelled like milk and something sweeter I couldn't name. Aunt Darlene helped where she could, but most of it fell on me. And honestly, I preferred it that way. He was mine, ours, but not Brandon's. Not anymore. When Caleb was 3 months old, I called my old university. The dean's office remembered me. They said my academic leave had been marked personal medical. I asked if I could come back. There was a pause on the line. Then a woman with a kind voice said, "We'll figure it out." I re-enrolled for the fall semester. I didn't know how I was going to do it, but I knew I had to try. That summer, I moved back to my mother's apartment. She cried when she saw Caleb, held him like a porcelain doll, then kissed his forehead and whispered, "You're safe now." I could see the pride in her face, buried beneath worry and fatigue. She didn't say, "I told you so." She didn't have to. School with a baby was brutal. I woke up at 5 a.m. to feed Caleb, then pumped milk while skimming lecture slides. I carried flashcards in my diaper bag, slept in 45-minute increments, studied during naps, took tests with eyes so red I looked half blind. There were days I wanted to quit, nights I sat on the bathroom floor, crying into a towel while Caleb slept in the next room. But somehow I made it through. By the end of my second semester back, I was passing every class. By the end of the year, I was getting top marks. My classmates started noticing. One girl whispered in the locker room, "Isn't she the one with the baby?" Another replied, "Yeah, and she's still kicking all our asses." They weren't wrong. I was tired, stretched thin, fraying at the edges, but I was moving forward, and every step I took was for him. For Caleb, for the version of me that had once thought her life ended in that cafe on a rainy afternoon. She was gone now. In her place stood someone new, someone sharper, someone stronger, someone who had learned that motherhood wasn't the end of anything. It was the beginning of everything. By the time Caleb turned 10, I had performed my first solo surgery. A boy, 8 years old, with a congenital heart defect. I remember scrubbing in with trembling fingers, heart pounding so loudly I thought everyone in New York could hear it. But the moment the scalpel touched skin, everything went quiet. My mind, my nerves, my doubts, all of it disappeared. There was only the rhythm of the monitors, the hush of the team around me, and the knowledge that one wrong move could end a life. And when that little heart started beating strong and steady again, I knew I had chosen the right path. Years passed, Slowly at first, then all at once. I finished my residency, completed my fellowship, and finally, at 32, opened my own private cardiovascular clinic in downtown Raleigh. Carter Heart Institute. My name was on the glass. My son's drawings were pinned to the corkboard in my office. My mother cried when she saw the grand opening banner. Caleb, now in middle school, walked through the clinic halls like he owned the place, greeting nurses and asking smart questions about pacemakers and stents. People began to notice. They said I was young to be this accomplished, that I must have had help connections. But the truth was, I had done it all the hard way, one late night, one unpaid bill, one missed birthday party at a time. I didn't care about praise. I cared about precision, about keeping hearts beating. I never thought about Brandon anymore. Not really. I didn't hate him. I didn't miss him. He had become a closed file in the back of my mind, labeled, sorted irrelevant. I heard whispers from time to time. He married someone from a well-known family, worked for his father's firm, then disappeared from the social circuit after a scandal. Embezzlement, maybe. Something involving his dad's bank going under. I never checked. Some stories, once finished, don't need to be reread. But fate has a twisted sense of humor. It was a Thursday. The sky outside was heavy with autumn rain. I had just finished reviewing a patient's angiogram when Marina, my front desk nurse, knocked and stepped into the office holding a clipboard. "Dr. Carter," she said gently, "we've got an emergency incoming. Male, 38, myocardial infarction, unstable vitals. EMTs say he's crashing." I nodded, already standing. "We prepped a room." "Or two," she replied. "Also, his name is Brandon Whitmore." Time stilled. For just a beat. The room faded around me, and I was 19 again, sitting across from him as he pushed money across a cafe table like I was disposable. I inhaled slowly, then exhaled. "Page the surgical team. I'm on my way." My voice didn't tremble. I walked into or two and saw him. Pale, sweating, wires and tubes snaking across his chest. His hair, once perfectly styled, was now damp and streaked with gray. The arrogance that used to ooze from his every pore was gone, replaced by panic and pain. And in his eyes, when they opened and found mine, there was a flicker of recognition that bordered on disbelief. "Emily," he whispered. His voice was dry, cracked. "It's you." I didn't flinch. "I'm your cardiac surgeon," I said, pulling on my gloves. "Try not to speak. We need to stabilize you." "But you? How?" His words dissolved into a gasp. "Save your breath," I said calmly. "We'll take care of you." And we did. 3 hours under the lights. Every artery, every suture, every beat of his heart, held in the hands of the woman he once discarded like nothing. And I didn't hesitate. I didn't miss a step, because I wasn't doing it for him. I was doing it because I had vowed to never let bitterness dictate my skill. Because the life I had built wasn't a product of vengeance. It was a declaration of resilience. When the final stitch was in, and the monitor settled into a steady rhythm, my assistant whispered, "He's stable." I nodded. Transfer to recovery. I peeled off my gloves, my hand steady, my heart oddly quiet. I saved his life, and for the first time in 16 years he owed me everything, comma. I checked on him the next morning, not because I wanted to, but because it was my duty. As I stepped into the ICU room, I saw him sitting up slightly, propped by pillows, a thin line of sweat still glistening along his hairline. His face looked older, sunken, like life had chewed him up and spit him out. But his eyes, they searched my face with a kind of desperation that made me want to turn around and leave. "Emily," he said softly, as if saying my name might change the way time had passed. "You really became a doctor." I didn't answer. "I thought about you," he added quickly. "So many times, after everything." I kept my voice even. "We're not here to talk about the past. You're stable, and you're lucky to be alive. Your artery was nearly 100% blocked." He blinked slowly. "I never thought you'd be the one to save you." I finished for him. Neither did I. But I took an oath. He looked away, ashamed or maybe just tired. I deserve that. I didn't reply. Then he said the one thing I hadn't expected. Do I have a son? My chest tightened, but I didn't flinch. His name is Caleb. Brandon swallowed. How old? 16. He closed his eyes for a long moment. When he opened them again, something had softened. Does he know about me? No, I said, my voice flat. He knows he has a mother who raised him alone. That's enough. I'd like to see him, he said carefully. Just once. I won't ask for more. I opened my mouth to refuse, but then fate intervened. The door creaked open, and there he was, Caleb. My boy, tall now, his backpack slung over one shoulder, his hoodie slightly askew. Hey, Mom, he said, walking in like he always did after school. I grabbed your notes from the conference room. Oh, sorry. He froze when he saw Brandon. Didn't know you were with a patient. I looked at Brandon. His eyes had gone wide. He was staring at Caleb like he was seeing a ghost. And in that moment, I saw it too. The shape of the jaw, the angle of his brow, just enough of him. This is Mr. Whitmore, I said calmly. He's recovering from surgery. Caleb stepped forward and extended his hand, always polite, always composed. Nice to meet you, sir. Hope you're feeling better. Brandon took the handshake like it was a lifeline. You're very kind, he said quietly. Caleb turned to me. I'll wait in your office, okay? Go ahead, I said. I'll be there soon. When the door closed behind him, Brandon exhaled like he hadn't been breathing. He's incredible. Yes, I said. He is. He looked down, then back at me. You did that. Without me. Without anyone. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. I messed up, he whispered. I know that. I knew at the moment. I walked away. But you have to believe me. I regretted it. I tilted my head. Did you regret losing me or regret looking bad? His eyes welled. Both. I didn't soften. He doesn't need you. He's grown into someone kind, smart, resilient, without ever knowing who you were. I don't want to take anything from you, Brandon said. I thought maybe I could give something back. Somehow. I studied his face. The sorrow looked real. The weakness was no act. But none of it changed what had happened. You can't give back what you threw away, I said quietly. I know, he whispered. But maybe I could still be a friend to him. He has friends, I replied. Brandon nodded slowly, accepting it. Then maybe I could be forgiven. I paused, not because I didn't know the answer, but because I wanted him to feel the silence. Then I said, I don't hate you, Brandon. I don't feel anything for you. Not anymore. He looked gutted, and that's when I knew this was the revenge. Not anger, not revenge in the movies, but this moment where he realized he no longer mattered, where I stood taller than every word he once used to cut me down, where I was whole and he was hollow. I turned to leave, but before I stepped out, I looked over my shoulder. By the way, I said, thank you. He looked confused. For what? For showing me exactly who you were before I wasted any more time trying to love you. I didn't look back as I walked down the hallway of my clinic. The air smelled like antiseptic and pine-scented floor cleaner. The buzz of monitors and quiet footsteps felt grounding, familiar. Outside, the October rain whispered against the windows. I slipped off my surgical cap and let my fingers run through my hair. Somewhere behind me, Brandon Whitmore was alive because of my hands. And that would have to be enough, because he would never touch my life again. When I stepped into my office, Caleb was waiting with a peanut butter sandwich and a tangle of biology flashcards. He sat cross-legged on the sofa, his hoodie half-zipped, eyes scanning notes like he was preparing to take over the world. Hey, he said, looking up. You were in there for a while. Complicated case. I smiled. Something like that. He studied me for a moment. You okay? I nodded. I am now. And I meant it. That night, over dinner, my mother, her hair now more silver than brown, asked casually, "Everything all right at the clinic today?" I took a bite of pasta before answering. Just an old patient from the past, needed a new heart, that's all. She paused, eyes narrowing slightly but didn't press. Maybe she already knew. Maybe she didn't have to. Later, as Caleb and I washed dishes together, he asked me the question I had been avoiding for years. "Mom, why don't I have a dad?" My hands stilled under the warm water. I turned slowly to look at him. His eyes were steady, curious, not wounded. "You have me," I said softly, "and Grandma, and all the love you've ever needed." He nodded. "I know. I just wondered." I dried my hands, sat down at the table, and looked at him across the dim light of the kitchen. "Your father wasn't ready to be a parent," I said. "He didn't see you as a blessing. But that doesn't mean you weren't one." Caleb was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "It's okay. I don't feel like I missed anything. I don't need a dad. I just need you." I reached across the table and took his hand. "And you have me. Forever." That night, after he went to bed, I sat alone in my study and looked out the window. The rain had slowed to a mist. My reflection stared back at me, older, wiser, but still with that same defiant spark in her eyes. 16 years ago, I had been a girl with shaking hands, a shattered heart, and 2 pink lines, and now I was a doctor with a son who made the world brighter just by existing. I had walked through every storm, and I was still standing. People talk about revenge like it's fire, loud, consuming, explosive. But real revenge, the kind that lasts, is quiet. It's building a life so solid, so radiant, that the ones who tried to break you are blinded by it. Brandon never got to know Caleb, never got to see the way he tilts his head when he's thinking, or how he hums when he concentrates, or the way he hugs. Tight, sincere, like he never wants to let go. And that wasn't punishment. That was consequence. Some absences are earned. The next morning, Caleb walked with me into the clinic, his backpack slung over one shoulder, his eyes bright. "Can I shadow you today?" he asked. "I want to see what it's like in surgery." I smiled. "You can observe from the gallery window, just like we planned." He grinned. "One day, I'm going to stand in there beside you." "No," I said, placing a hand on his shoulder. "One day, I'll be standing beside you." And I meant it. We stepped into the bright corridor together, the day unfolding ahead of us like a clean, white chart, blank, unbroken, full of possibility. As the doors swung open, I looked at my son, my greatest decision, my quietest victory, and knew one thing with absolute certainty. The only life I ever needed to save was my own. And I had. Completely. Looking back now, I don't regret the pain. Not the tears, not the silence, not even the betrayal. Because pain has a way of carving space for truth, for strength, for clarity. I used to think survival meant staying quiet, staying small, staying attached to people who didn't value me. But I've learned healing begins the moment you stop chasing closure from those who broke you and start building peace within yourself. I was once a girl who begged someone to stay. Now, I'm a woman who walks away with grace, with purpose, with a life I built on my own terms. And if anyone watching this feels like they've been abandoned, erased, or made to feel like they're too much or not enough, please remember this. You don't need to be chosen to be worthy. You don't need their apology to move forward. And you sure as hell don't need their love to love yourself. Some of the most powerful stories aren't the ones where we win someone back. They're the ones where we win ourselves back.